could Donald Trump's trade war be collapsing? Not in Beijing, not in Brussels, but right here in American courts? On August 29, 2025, a U.S. federal appeals court delivered a stunning ruling. Most of Trump's sweeping global tariffs, the same tariffs that defined his first presidency and shaped his America First economic vision, were illegal. And yet, despite that ruling, the tariffs are still in effect, at least for now. So what does this mean for the American economy, for global trade, and for Trump himself as he stares down both a re-election campaign and a showdown with the Supreme Court? Let's break it all down. On Friday, August 29, 2025, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit ruled that Trump's tariffs violated the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA for short. This was the law Trump leaned on back in 2018 and 2019 when he slapped tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars of imports, from Chinese electronics to European steel. The judges said Trump overstepped his authority. According to the ruling, the president cannot simply declare economic emergencies and impose tariffs without proper congressional approval or clear evidence of a national security threat. But here's the twist. Those tariffs remain in effect until mid-October 2025 because Trump's legal team has already filed an appeal, and everyone expects this battle to end up in the Supreme Court. Trump himself reacted almost immediately. On his social platform, he called the decision a political attack, claimed the court was undermining American jobs, and hinted that the Supreme Court will back him, just like they did before on other major cases. Let's rewind for a moment. What exactly are these tariffs we're talking about? Back in 2018, during Trump's first term, his administration imposed sweeping tariffs on China, the European Union, Canada, and Mexico, covering goods from raw steel to household appliances. The justification? Trump argued that America was being cheated, that unfair trade practices, stolen intellectual property, and cheap imports were hollowing out American factories. The centerpiece was a 25% tariff on steel and a 10% tariff on aluminum, but it didn't stop there. Billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods, electronics, clothing, machinery, were also targeted. Now, critics say these tariffs backfired. Studies by groups like the Peterson Institute for International Economics found that the tariffs raised costs for U.S. businesses and consumers while doing little to revive long-term manufacturing. American farmers were hit particularly hard when China retaliated by slapping tariffs on soybeans, pork, and other U.S. exports. But politically, tariffs became a signature Trump policy, a symbol of his willingness to fight global trade wars and defy both allies and rivals. For his base, tariffs meant strength. For his critics, they meant recklessness. And that brings us back to today, because the courts are now saying that the president may not even have had the legal authority to impose them in the first place. So what exactly did the appeals court say? The ruling centered on how Trump used the IEPA, a Cold War-era law designed to let presidents impose sanctions and restrictions in cases of genuine national security emergencies. Past presidents used it to freeze Iranian assets, cut off trade with terrorist organizations, and block Russian oligarchs. But tariffs on Canadian aluminum? European cars? That's where the court drew the line. In its decision, the panel wrote, "The president's authority under IEPA is not unlimited. To sustain extraordinary powers, there must be extraordinary justification. The tariffs imposed under this authority lacked such justification." In plain English, Trump stretched the law too far. Now, what happens next? Trump's legal team has already filed notice of appeal, setting the stage for the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court sides with him, Trump could gain nearly unchecked power to impose tariffs whenever he sees fit, reshaping American trade policy overnight. But if the court upholds the appeals decision, it could permanently clip presidential power over trade, not just for Trump, but for any future president. This isn't just about economics. It's a constitutional question. Who really controls trade policy in America? Congress or the president? Quick engagement break. Should the president have the power to slap tariffs on foreign goods whenever he wants? Or should Congress have to approve it? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your take. Now let's zoom out. Because this court ruling doesn't just affect American lawyers or politicians, it sends ripples across the globe. For China, this is huge. Beijing has spent years trying to work around Trump's tariffs by building new trade ties with Russia, Africa, and Latin America. If the tariffs collapse, it gives Chinese exporters direct relief and opens the door for a surge of goods back into the American market. For Europe, especially countries like Germany and France that depend on car exports, the ruling is seen as vindication. European leaders have long argued Trump's tariffs violated WTO rules, and now a U.S. court seems to agree. For American businesses, the picture is mixed. Importers, like electronics companies and car makers, welcome the potential end of tariffs. But some U.S. steel and aluminum producers, who benefited from the protection, fear losing out. And then there's the 2024 election context. Trump is already using this ruling as political ammunition, framing himself as a fighter against a globalist legal system that wants to destroy American jobs. If the Supreme Court reverses the decision, he'll claim victory. If they uphold it, he'll claim the system is rigged. Either way, he wins politically by keeping the fight alive. So where does that leave us? As of right now, Trump's tariffs remain in effect until October 2025. Between now and then, all eyes will be on the Supreme Court. Will they expand presidential power over trade, or will they rein Trump in? This ruling has enormous implications, not just for Donald Trump's legacy, but for the very balance of power in the United States, and for the global economy that depends on American trade policy. And that brings me to you. Do you think tariffs are a necessary tool to protect American jobs and industry, or are they just a hidden tax on consumers that hurts the economy in the long run? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be checking them out. Also, if you've made it this far, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. We've got a lot more coming as this story develops in the weeks ahead. Because remember, this isn't just about one court ruling. This could be the case that defines the limits of presidential power for decades to come.